right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise. We're going to talk about how to survive it. I'm your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, most importantly, a little guy raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the 1970s and 1980s. Warning, I'm going to give a trigger warning early this week. We're going to talk about some sensitive things. We try to have fun here. We try to heal. Each episode features my own brand of sarcasm, humor, and observation, even on subjects like this. And please note, it is never meant to offend. Everyone here is welcome, no matter where you may be on this journey, in or out of the paradise that is Jehovah's Witnesses. We're going to get sensitive this week. Here we are. It's going to be really sensitive as we discuss what many would say is an obsession inside the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses. Oh yes, we're going to talk about sex. If you're uncomfortable with discussing sex or didn't realize that both the Bible and Jehovah's Witnesses have a lot to say about getting naked and getting busy, now is your opportunity to turn this episode off. I am going to do my best to be respectful, keep it above board, but I'm only human, and God knows what I'm going to say or do as we discuss this subject. You have been warned. We're going to shine a spotlight on what I believe is an obsession with the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, an act or acts that are as natural to the human experience as eating, sleeping, and even pooping. And might I add, an act every single one of us should be very, very grateful for. We were all made by our parents. I know. Ew. And we are only here today because of sex. I know. It's very, very, very sensitive. It's one of those subjects, if not the subject, that makes people uncomfortable. As you no doubt noted, while I make every effort to discuss the subject of sex delicately out of respect for those that find it uncomfortable, it's obvious from the outset I don't consider sex the taboo subject that many other people do. Where did I develop that type of thinking? Well, if you're a Jehovah's Witness or were raised as one, you're exposed to the concept of sex at a very, very young age. It's undeniable because they talk about it a lot. Outside of endless reminders to preach to people because Jehovah, Jesus, and Samuel Hurd will soon kill them all if they don't agree with the governing body, there may be no other subject, not even money, that gets as much attention from Jesus and his 9 guys in upstate New York than sex. And I'll state here that I'm not naive. Sex is a big deal. It's a big deal. It sells. We're all living, breathing creatures because of it. And most people really enjoy it. We really enjoy it. It's a really big part of the human experience. Hopefully it's good for you and those you care about. I don't need to point out what many consider a blight on the planet. Things like the multi-billion-dollar pornography industry and OnlyFans, which is the new big thing going out there, I guess. Sex does get a lot of attention, and it always has throughout all of history. Most religions center around sex, fertility, and gods that can't even resist our gorgeous human women. I get it. You remember Greek gods, Norse gods, even Jehovah's angels. Wow. Gender neutral and without penises. They didn't materialize as women. They materialized as men, complete with reproductive organs. Even them, couldn't resist the beauty of human women and sex. Trust me, as a heterosexual male, I get it. But from a very young age, a Jehovah's Witness is exposed to the governing body's views on sex. And for a Jehovah's Witness, they grew up believing it's very, very bad for unmarried, consenting adults to touch each other in a pleasant way. Jehovah is watching after all, and he hates it. He really, really hates it, despite creating us this way and gearing up our bodies to make babies, starting sometimes as young as 9 or 10 years old when we enter puberty. Jehovah's an interesting God. That way, he made us to be attracted to each other. He made our bodies to bring pleasure to each other. He even rolled out what the governing body tells witnesses was his original purpose to naked people who no doubt figured out just how their body puzzle pieces fit together all on their own without the benefit of the internet, a magazine, or even anyone to tell them. And then Jehovah, in that original purpose, told them to have sex. He told them to have lots and lots and lots of sex. Keep having sex, he told them, until the whole earth was filled with their babies. Two perfect people, all alone, didn't have to lock the bedroom door because there was no kids to worry about. Eating healthy food and tossing each other around without a worry in the world. She didn't have a headache or even a menstrual cycle at that point. He had more testosterone than any man has a right to, with zero thought to needing a Viagra. He didn't have stress, nothing. None of that existed. Not with the original purpose. Just a gorgeous, perfect woman with the command from an invisible voice speaking to them from the clouds, telling them to get busy. Get real busy. So you see, our infatuation and endless enjoyment with sex, it's all Jehovah's fault anyway. He started the ball rolling. He did this to us. He made sex the center point, the nucleus of his original purpose. Is it any wonder that we as humans made in his image really enjoy sex? And it's a big part of our lives. And so from the beginning of human history, sex was a thing, a big thing. And leave it to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses to ignore decades of Watchtower articles on how Jehovah's son Satan somehow stuffed himself into a snake, or even what language he was using when he made the snake talk. That's not interesting at all, folks. The governing body instead want to talk about sex. And they talk about it a lot. This is a concrete fact. Jehovah's Witnesses, young and old, grow up with a twisted, dysfunctional view of sex. It leads to what for many can lead to a lifetime of dysfunction, both mentally and physically. It oftentimes leads to shame. It can lead to an unhealthy curiosity outside the bounds of what's normal. It leads to experimentation and secrets that do more harm than good. The bizarre obsession with all things sex can and does lots of damages to the marriages of Jehovah's Witnesses. At the very least, at least in my experience and my own observations as a former elder, it creates a bizarre view of something that is supposed to be very, very natural and practiced responsibly. As anyone who's been a witness knows, sex is forbidden for the unmarried heterosexual people. Lots of love at this point to our gay friends who may be listening, but that's a subject for another day. In past episodes, we're going to focus on that witness view of sex, and we all know gay people don't have a right to love each other, not if you're a Jehovah's Witness. See past episodes. But sex is forbidden among Jehovah's Witnesses, even heterosexual, meaning when you turn around at 13 and your body is going bonkers, you start hunting for that brother or sister you're going to marry at 18, as soon as you become an adult, because that sex and that feeling and your body's changes, they're going to lead you to commit fornication. That's sex between two unmarried people. Jehovah's Witnesses, excuse me, like to talk a lot about the Greek word porneia, and they have their own definition for fornication. And if they don't do any of these things, as we know in their culture, you're going to get disfellowshipped if you have sex before marriage. From the outset of a witness's experience with this very natural act, sex becomes dangerous. And Satan, by the way, really, really digs it. For that reason, the governing body goes out of its way constantly and consistently to warn Jehovah's Witnesses. I might add, it comes up at least once in every damn meeting. It's at every convention. It's in every video. How sex, the act of sex, is all around us. And a Jehovah's Witness literally grows up from the time they're exposed to this with an almost unhealthy, and I say almost to be nice, it really is an unhealthy fear of sex. Let me take you to some examples. From the Watchtower of 1981, November 1st, pages 3 through 6, under the aptly titled series Sexual Morality, Is It Really Possible? We get this nugget of Holy Spirit, quote, "We live in a world saturated with sex, and this has affected both young and old. You may feel as did one young man who said, 'Everything around us focuses on sex. It is as common as breathing and sleeping. Every time you pick up a magazine or turn on the TV, there it is. When you're at the store, driving your car, at work, at school, there it is. The way persons act, speak, and dress is constantly drawing attention to the human body and sex. It is the number one topic of conversation. Recent statistics show that worldwide, unprecedented numbers of teenagers, even preteens, are engaging in premarital sex relations." End quote. I know. You might be a landscaper digging a hole. You're thinking about sex. You might be flipping hamburgers at your local fast food joint. You're thinking about sex. You might see a woman dressed in a gown. She's doing that because she wants sex. So goes the thinking of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all very scary. And I think it's important to note, I'm not here talking about being irresponsible or developing unhealthy habits with sex. I'm not even going there. I'm simply showing that fear and shame are the earliest of messages regarding sex for a Jehovah's Witness. I was an elder for 11 years, and I can tell you and have shared before that at least 90% of the judicial committees that I served on were all dealing with sex. I know that shocks no one because they're obsessed with it. Some of the elders serving with me on a committee were drunks. They had drinking problems. But none of that was as nearly as important or as bad as what the person we were meeting with had been doing with his girlfriend last weekend. The message for a Jehovah's Witness becomes clear. Sex is bad. It is very, very bad. And so witnesses are forced into a world where they think, I gotta get married. I gotta get married young so we don't have to have these meetings. Let the problems begin. But that has never stopped the 9 guys in upstate New York from lying about all of it. In the Watchtower of 8111, pages 3 through 6, that same series, Sexual Morality, Is It Really Possible? We get this nugget, quote, do we see similar moral strength today? Yes. Countless young people worldwide will say that sexual morality is possible. These are youths associated with the congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses. Despite the corrupting moral influences in entertainment and the social life of today's society, not one step behind that of ancient Rome, these young persons as a group stand out as shining examples of purity. End quote. Nope. No, not at all. Completely and totally untrue. I'm here to tell you, as a person who was once a teenager inside Jehovah's Witnesses, became a ministerial servant, and an elder, that the vast majority of Jehovah's Witness teenagers experiment with sex. This guy included, as I mentioned. I had several judicial meetings of my own before becoming a teenager. Why? Me, cute sister, bad thanks. It's a real volatile cocktail, and it works when you're going through puberty. Who remembers those phrases back in the day like leading a double life? Oh, yeah. Almost every single person I knew in my peer group inside Jehovah's Witnesses during the 80s was messing around in one way or another. Me included, as I mentioned. I realized how prevalent it was throughout the entire organization once I became an elder, and then I had to deal with all of it. It's very real, even among Jehovah's Witness teenagers. For them to say that they are leading the charge of purity worldwide is grotesque absurdity. It couldn't be further from this truth. See 90 to 95% of judicial meetings. Something that is normal during puberty for a witness becomes a sin that can literally, at that age, wipe out their future, including a good shunning from their own family, friends, and the entire organization. All of this during the throes of puberty, when all of them are messing around. And I can tell you, just to insert a wild random thought, I knew elders I served with that were having sex before they were elders and never confessed it to the other guys. They just became an elder. That's how rampant this stuff is within Jehovah's Witnesses, probably leads to some of their obsession. The governing body's obsession with sex runs so deep. As just one very simple example, if you go to Jesus' website today and put sex into the Holy Spirit search bar, click on the Watchtower Publications index link, and boom, sit back in your chair and take a deep breath. Sex everywhere on their website. It's incredibly telling how obsessed this organization is with the subject of sex when you look at the heading that pops up on the Watchtower library. Under sex, it and then instructs a Jehovah's Witness the following, quote, see also, are you ready? Here we go. Adultery, bestiality, birth control, bisexuality, chasteness, child abuse, childbearing, fornication, gender, heredity, homosexuality, immorality, masturbation, pornea, pornography, pregnancy, premarital sex, prostitution, puberty, rape, reproduction, sexually transmitted diseases, and virgins, end quote. You're not getting enough under the sex section of the website. Go check out these other ones as well. And I got to the end of that list and I thought, what? Nothing on threesomes? I mean, wow. And that doesn't cover all the subjects under the heading of sex. Please don't give yourself carpal tunnel scrolling down the page if you do this. They got sex covered. They're obsessed with it. They are deeply obsessed with it. But you're a heterosexual man attracted to a woman. You're on a date. She smiles, and you know it. For the fellas out there, she pulls her hair back over her ear, and you are about to lose your mind. She is so cute. What does the governing body say to do in such a dangerous situation? Say it with me out loud. You know the counsel. Let's get our Bibles out. Let's go to the Bible. After all, the Bible is Jehovah's instruction manual on life. And trust me when I tell you, if you weren't aware, the Bible has a lot to say about sex. From the Watchtower of 2019, May, pages 21 through 25, paragraphs 7 and 8, under the article and subheading, "Do not be fooled by the wisdom of this world," we are told this, quote, "People who adopt the wisdom of this world ridicule the Bible's moral standards, claiming that they are unrealistic. Such people might ask, why would God create us with sexual desires and then tell us not to act on them? That question is founded on the flawed belief that humans must act on every urge they feel. You know, like when you're tired, you want to sleep. But the Bible states otherwise. It dignifies us by teaching that we can choose to control improper impulses, in contrast with the wisdom of this world. The Bible promotes a healthy view of sexuality. End quote. Keep that thought in mind, friends. The Bible promotes a healthy view of sexuality, and trust me, it's the touchstone for a Jehovah's Witness. But again, my heart is beating so fast. I'm looking at her. I want to be with her so bad I ache, in that way. And I need to get myself together. So I'm mentally tapping into my Jehovah's Witness training, and I'm accessing the Bible to see how Jehovah views sex. I need to value this virgin babe sitting in front of me the way Jehovah views cute virgins. What do I know about Jehovah, virgins, and sex as found in the Bible? Thank you, Stephen Lett, for the reminder. Despite wanting her so bad, I'm going to get my New World Translation out and tap into my Bible training to help pull myself together. Damn, she is so cute. But then I access this. At Numbers 31, 13 through 18 of the New World Translation, I've been told to get my Bible out and get Jehovah's view on sex. We're told this, quote, "Then Moses and Eleazar, the priest, and all the chieftains of the assembly went out to meet them outside the camp. But Moses grew indignant at the appointed men of the combat forces, the chiefs of the thousands and the chiefs of the hundreds who were coming in from the military expedition. Moses said to them," remember, Moses is the governing body of ancient Israel, God's hand-picked guy. Moses, back to the verse, said to them, "Have you preserved all the females alive? Look, they are the ones who by Balaam's word induced the Israelites to commit unfaithfulness toward Jehovah over the affair of Peor, so that the scourge came upon the assembly of Jehovah. Now you should kill every male among the children and kill every woman who has had sexual relations with a man. But you may keep alive all the young girls who have not had sexual relation with a man." End quote. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. What? Let me get this straight. I am feeling it. She's hot. We want each other. I'm tapping into the Bible to calm myself down. I need Jehovah's view on sex, virgins, and everything else. And I'm learning that Jehovah, he does hold virgins in high regard. He's keeping them as spoils of war, for his guys, the Israelites, to have sex with later. Wait, that doesn't apply, does it? I'm sure they're getting married first, right? 4 books into the Bible, a book I'm told to access when I'm horny, and I'm getting some really weird messages on sex, virgins, and a whole lot more. And did you note kids had to die? And women who were obviously mothers because they had sex, they had to die. But keep the virgins. They're great for the guys who need sex later. But the Bible can help me resist the urges Jehovah himself created me with? Can someone from the governing body or the organization of Jehovah's Witnesses tell me how so? She's smiling. She's biting her lower lip. And I got to tell you at this point, I got my Bible. I just read this and I got nothing. I got nothing except a few questions for the God who made us this way and kills people but keeps the virgins. Wait a minute. I need to be strong in this situation. I'm tapping into my witness training. I need to resist my urge to maul her in a bedroom with superhuman strength. Whose example can I tap into? I need superhuman strength to resist her. I am losing my mind. Hormones are firing. Other stuff's firing. We'll leave that alone. Hey, who can I be inspired by in the Bible? I know. How about the strongest man that ever lived? Samson himself. Jehovah loved him. Jehovah even made him a leader, sort of like Jeffrey Jackson, over his people. I'm going to be like Samson. I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to resist my desire to tear her clothes off. I remember what it says at Judges chapter 16, verses 1 and 2 of the New World Translation. Thanks again, governing body, for telling me to get my Bible out in this moment, where it tells us this, quote, one time Samson went to Gaza. What? Wait a minute. What? Let me start over. What? Wait a minute. Quote, one time Samson went to Gaza and saw a prostitute there, and he went into her. The Gazites were told Samson has come here. So they surrounded him and lay in ambush for him all night long in the city gate. They stayed quiet the whole night, saying to themselves, when daylight comes, we will kill him. End quote. Wait a minute. What was Samson doing in there all night with a prostitute, according to Judges 16? I think I know. And again, you're a witness in 2024, a young person. Oh, it doesn't matter. We all like sex, right? We're adults here. But I'm horny. She looks incredible. And I could have skipped the date and skipped her and just went to a prostitute like Samson did. I mean, Samson's the strongest guy ever. I'm told he's a man of faith. I'm told he's going to be resurrected in paradise, and I'm going to actually answer to him because that's what the governing body says. But Samson went to prostitutes. And I just want to take her back to my place, and neither of these stories are helping at this point between Moses and Samson. But hey, Jehovah's Witnesses and sex, just read your Bible more. Read the Bible. It has the answers, and it'll get you calmed down real quick. From the Watchtower of 2007, April 1st, pages 4 through 7, under the article Answers That Work, we are told this from the governing body. Quote, less readily accepted is what the Bible says on sexual matters. Just read too. Contrary to what many have been led to believe, the Bible does not prudishly condemn as sinful all sexual desire. But note this, quote, but it does provide sound advice on how human sexuality should be expressed. End quote. Does it now? Does the Bible give us a look on how healthy sex should be expressed? We got prostitutes, we got killing mothers in favor of virgins. I'm 13 years old. I'm a witness. I'm working towards baptism, and I'm trying to deal with my sexual urges and forming opinions on all things sex. And I got to tell you, wow, the Bible seems like a healthy place to start learning about sex. Sound advice? From the beginning, invisible angels are having sex with imperfect creatures lower than them on the food chain. We have disturbing titles for such things if a human considers an animal that way, if you know what I'm saying. And the kids even have illustrations to look at in my book of Bible stories of angels that got busy with our females and women. But okay, the Bible apparently gives sound advice on sex. Sure. Including that single, childless guy, the Apostle Paul, condemning sex outside of marriage or sex between two consenting adults of the same gender, all made by Jehovah himself, by the way. Seems like sound advice from a guy who knows what he's talking about. But again, one more time to emphasize all of this, you're worked up and horny, and I don't even know if that's a word people still use, but I'm using it here. A Jehovah's Witness is taught that the Bible and the 9 guys in upstate New York that interpret it for us is a great place to learn about healthy, sound advice on the lives in times of all things sex. From the Watchtower of 2011, November 1st, page 3, Does the Answer Matter? Tells us this. Does it matter whether you know and live by what the Bible teaches about sex? The Bible claims that it is inspired of God and beneficial for teaching. If you believe that God created humans and that the Bible is His inspired word, then what it says on the subject is worth knowing. End quote. And I'm here to tell you today, it sure is. You should know what the Bible says about sex. The Bible as a book is filled cover to cover on numerous pages with sexual depravity. I've only touched on a few examples here. I gave 2 in the interest of time. And a Jehovah's Witness is told to bank all these stories in their head and to apply them to their sex life, or lack thereof in many cases. As I always do, I encourage anyone listening, particularly a Jehovah's Witness on the fence or not, to pull out that New World Translation, get it off the shelf or out of that book bag, and just sit down and read it. Just read the Bible. No watchtowers, no study aids. Just read the Bible, because it indeed does have a lot to say about sex and all of its many stories that came to us from Jehovah himself, or so we're told. And they're relayed today through the faithful and discreet slave, otherwise known as the governing body, to shape our view of sex. And surely there's no unhealthy views or obsession with sex in the lives of a Jehovah's Witness, right? It's all very balanced because it comes from Jehovah's book. But when you're faced with someone you can't resist, you're in a moment, and we all know how sex works. We're grown adults. The heart starts beating, we start sweating, we can't think of anything else. It's the way we're made. When you're faced with that, Consider what the Young People Ask book on page 89 tells us. How am I going to deal with this? She looks incredible. He's so cute and he said all the right things. We want each other. What am I going to do? We can't fornicate. A witness is told this. Young People Ask, page 89, quote, direct your mind elsewhere. Okay. Try to focus on things besides sex. Go ahead and give that a shot. This should include a hobby, sports, exercise, or any activity that can redirect your focus. Reading the Bible helps, says a young woman named Valerie. Not sure who she is. It contains thoughts that are on a higher plane. And when you have that in your mind, you don't really have much room for anything else. End quote. The Bible contains thoughts on sex, sexual desires, impulses, and anything that comes with the act on a higher plane, we're told. It's that book that can help us redirect our minds if we're a witness. Never mind what your body parts are doing. We're not going there. You're just supposed to redirect what you're thinking about. I'm going to tap into the Bible. Can't emphasize this enough as one of the answers from a governing body member on all things sex. But I got to tell you, and it's a fan favorite here, I'm trying to tap into this biblical direction during a moment when I can't even think straight. I am mesmerized by her. And oh, okay, just ask Lot. How did Lot handle sex? Losing his wife didn't stop him from making some pretty bad decisions the next day with his own daughters. Or how about Abraham? You remember him, the father of the religion, several religions actually. Abraham, how about the fact that he was the first swinger on record when he shares Sarah with Abimelech in exchange for some resources, including some cash? All in Genesis, I might add. On second thought, never mind, he wasn't the first swinger. He may have been the first pimp on record based on that. And did we mention that Abraham and Sarah, well, they were brother and sister? Yeah. It's in the Bible. Sarah was his half-sister. Or how about Jacob pining for a woman and having sex with her ugly sister instead? That's what the Bible tells us, not my words. And not only having sex because he was tricked by her father with her ugly sister, but her servant Zilpah, Genesis tells us, joined them in the tent for what was the first threesome on record. On and on it goes. The Bible does have a lot to say about all dynamics surrounding sex. Should a Jehovah's Witness look to the Bible for guidance on how to handle their own junk in a pressure-packed moment when the hormones are raging? I'm going to leave that up to the listener, the Bible. However, as I've gotten away from in recent weeks, I want to get back to some of my own random thoughts on the matter. How about this one? It's always been interesting to me that Jesus doesn't comment much about sex in the Bible. Not at all. He came to this earth. He had the most important message to this date. And he doesn't talk about sex a whole lot. Odd? He does comment on marriage and sex within marriage. And he makes absolutely no mention of homosexuality. None. Zero. Odd? Huh. Or how about this? The Bible couldn't have been written by males, right? It couldn't have been written by men. There's just no chance. Why didn't Jehovah use just one female writer? Could he have given us just one writer from a female perspective of things? They carry babies, they have menstrual cycles, they nurse children, all of that connected from and to the act of sex leads to motherhood. And it's odd. Not one female perspective or writer in the book of the Bible that we're told, whether we're male or female as a Jehovah's Witness, to access on controlling our sexual urges. Not one book from a woman's perspective. And when you consider the subject of sex, well, I got to tell you, it does require two people. That's how it works. A man and a woman. But apparently her perspective doesn't matter in the book even though she may be the object of someone's desire, and yeah, just doesn't matter. I mean, I don't know. Jehovah wanted a virgin to carry his son. You remember that? Why not a sexually active woman? Anyone else have the question? Why not a married woman? Huh. Do men and writers of the Bible favor a sexually experienced woman? Give it some thought. Couple all of this with the fact that not a single woman in the entire Bible on record had her own stable of male concubines or multiple husbands. And well, that's interesting because the guys do. And I'm sure the Bible wasn't written by men, right? Inquiring minds want to know, including my own. I'm not even, as another random thought, going to touch on the Bible's brutal assaults, murders, homelessness, dismissals, or zero property rights for women in the entire pages of God's holy book. The views of women on sex apparently just don't matter. Jehovah is apparently all about the male perspective, and well, so were the Bible writers. But yes, tap into it in a moment of where you're hot and bothered, even if you're a lady. You're going to find some interesting things. Go read it if you want to read what the Bible says on sex. But yes, the governing body shapes and takes from this book, and with their own opinions, how a Jehovah's Witness views what is arguably the most important act in their life. And they use the Bible to do it. Seems pretty balanced. I've alluded to it, but no one gets the brunt of distorted views on sex inside this organization like a Jehovah's Witness teenager, which of course they carry with them right into adulthood and marriage. A J-dub teenager has their view of sex shaped in much the same way as everything else in the organization. You can't enjoy something without feeling fear or bad about it. And this comes down to even just thinking about sex. Daydreaming about her yoga pants can get you in big, big trouble in this organization. From the Awake of 1993, July 22nd, pages 20 through 22, under this series of articles, boy, did I read these. How can I stop daydreaming so much? The governing body's advice is this, quote, during his teen years, Alan, not his real name, had daydreams. That's in the paragraph. I've got to point that out because it's rare they do that. But starting back at the beginning, quote, during his teen years, Alan, not his real name, had daydreams of another sort. He learned to conjure up erotic thoughts and would spend much of his time doing so. Later on, he dedicated his life to God as a Christian. That did not change anything, Alan admits. Sexual daydreaming continued to be a way of life for me. You do yourself harm if you deliberately nurture sexual thoughts. End quote. Alan is talking about making a movie in his head. We get it. We're all probably familiar with it. Hopefully everyone's of an adult age listening in on this show. You learn early that Jehovah is also inside your head. I've done episodes on it. He's in your heart, and Jehovah is everywhere else for that matter. He knows you're horny, and he isn't happy about it. He's not happy about it, even though he created us this way. So what is a young Jehovah's Witness supposed to do with all this? Let's ask the 9 guys in upstate New York. Same article from the Awake of 93, quote, how can you pull the plug on immoral fantasies? I want to make a joke there about plugs. I'm going to move along. I just want to recognize that I'm demonstrating immense self-control in this episode. Back to the quote, how can you pull the plug on immoral fantasies? Recalls Alan, I decided to take an either-or approach. I couldn't concentrate on sex as long as I was concentrating on something else. Alan thus learned self-discipline. Interestingly, researchers have found that we daydream the most when we have little to do. I wonder what their advice is going to be to Alan and the rest of us who are worked up. Back to the quote. So having plenty to do, especially in the work of the Lord, is yet another way to keep bad thoughts from taking root. End quote. You're all worked up about that guy that was flirting with you, or you've been single forever. The answer is always the same for a Jehovah's Witness. We already covered reading the Bible filled with all its glorious examples. But the second piece of advice comes from the faithful slave. Do more for Jehovah's Witnesses and his organization. Suddenly, as they say, researches, without naming them or where the study came from, have found that staying busy helps someone deal with sexual urges. And what is a better way than to serve the governing body? You're worked up. You see her at every meeting. You're just losing your mind. Go stand in front of a book cart. That'll solve it. Going back many decades, the organization has produced book after book, after magazine, after Bible drama, after symposium, after on and on it goes, on how young adults can avoid sex and how to view their feelings, even their biology, what their bodies are doing. With all of it coming under the umbrella of discipline, if you act on any of those urges. Cue the shame. Aside from making light of this subject in some ways, it's serious because shame is the result. People develop sexual dysfunction in this organization. And is it any wonder? Jehovah's Witnesses have such a bizarre view of sex when they're being told things like this from a young age. And I'm about to share something. I'm going to again institute a trigger warning. If you're sensitive to sexual things or biological sexual functions, please note what's coming may make you uncomfortable. But it's from the faithful slave. So take comfort. Here it is. From the Awake of 1990, February 8th, pages 13 through 15. Why is this happening to my body? Is the article. We get this. Trigger warning. Quote, nocturnal emissions. Young boys also have a number of problems to deal with as their reproductive system matures. Can you imagine, end quote for a moment, can you imagine calling this a problem? Do you see where the shame begins? Our bodies are made this way. And who made us again? That's right, Jehovah. He put two nude people down there and said, get after it. And now it's a problem that our bodies work this way. Back to the quote. For example, your sexual organs begin manufacturing a fluid called semen. This contains millions of microscopic sperm, each of which is capable of fertilizing a female egg and producing a baby if released during sexual intercourse. End quote. Yeah, I know this. I actually know this. The animals work this way. I get it. Jehovah made us this way, right? Right? Confusion from a young age. They're otherwise known as wet dreams. Let's just get it out of the way for us fellas. We get it. Incidentally, as I do, throwing my own experience into the mix, don't worry, I'm not going there. I learned about all of this from the Blood Red Youth Book of the late 1970s. I believe it came out in 1976. What a gem. For the guys that are my age, what a gem, huh? But because I didn't have a father, I did have a very kind brother in the congregation study this book with me. I remember it like yesterday. And what an eye-opener. Folks, aside from school and being a kid who led a double life, I learned a lot about sex from this book, the youth book. Not sure if this is emphasized for young teenage guys today anymore. I don't know. Not that book, but the newer versions. But what an eye-opener. But back to this article that we just quoted from 1990 in The Awake. Are you ready? See if you can catch it and how this impacts a person's thinking on sex in this organization. Quote, since you are not married, sperm simply builds up. Some is gradually absorbed by your body, but from time to time, some will be released at night while you sleep. This is commonly called a wet dream. A better name for it, though, is nocturnal emission. Why? I don't. Since the emission often takes place on its own, with or without an accompanying erotic dream. End quote. Yeah, it's biology. And I think you would agree, governing body, that Jehovah made us this way. But setting the stage, you're a 13-year-old boy. You're trying to figure out why you start feeling the way you do when she just walks into a class in that t-shirt and those shorts. And you immediately remember that, as they said, you're not married. Yeah, I'm 13, but you're not married. So whatever you're feeling inside and whatever else is going on is bad. It's really, really bad, young man. Sex, marriage equals marriage for a Jehovah's Witness teenager. Forget the dreams you're having about the sister at the hall. You need to be planning to marry her if you think she has nice legs. That's it, buddy. You need to think about marrying her. That is going to solve your problem. That's the governing body. And that's a society and a culture of sexual dysfunction. And if you're thinking, well, Stacy, why can't a young brother or sister just deal with all this sexual energy by, it's private, but, masturbating? Well, I thought you'd never ask, because the shame runs deep in this organization. From the Watchtower of 1983, June 1st, pages 23 through 28 features the articles Maintaining God's View of Sex under the subheading The Bible's View of Masturbation. We're told this, quote, a person who masturbates is putting improper emphasis on sex. He feeds and enlivens his sexual craving in a wrong way. Yet, not only men are involved. There has been an increase of masturbation among women, end quote. Wait, really? What? I'm not going there, no jokes intended. But do you mean to tell me that women like sex too? Really? Imagine that. But you're a Jehovah's Witness sitting there. And you're a sister. And you may be part of this habit. It's in private. No one knows. What do you and how do you feel about sex when you're being told these things as a woman inside this organization? Let me tell you, I dealt with it a lot as an elder. But for anyone that grew up a Jehovah's Witness or is currently a single adult J-dub, you know how seriously this organization views masturbation. It's a sin. And I personally dealt with it on judicial committees. I'm not going into details, but look, the whole experience rubbed me the wrong way. Okay. I did it. It's out of the way. I need to drop at least one inappropriate comment. There it is. But we're not shaming the guys or the ladies from doing something private that no one needs to know about. The governing body also make the following claim in multiple places and references. The Watchtower of 1973, September 15th, pages 564 to 569, under Breaking Free of Self-Abuse, Why and How, we're told this, quote, because the practice is one contrary to nature, the masturbator pays a mental penalty. The habitual practice cripples his social and emotional development, hinders his attaining a healthful outlook and attitude toward the other sex and toward people in general. It can turn the person inward upon himself, making him introverted. Or it can, brace for it, quote, or it can, and frequently does, lead into homosexuality, end quote. What? What? This was such a big deal in the 1970s and 80s. One can only imagine what was going on back at Bethel that got them to write about this. I mean, what could go wrong? A population of single guys cooped up in a building together. I wonder where this came from. And keep in mind that even in recent years, pillows, that pillow you sleep on at night, they too are dangerous. They too are instruments of Satan, tempting us to have sex with ourselves. Pillows, very deadly. Can you believe this? It's in print. And to say that this doesn't lead to sexual dysfunction is just, it's absolutely naive. Masturbation is not mentioned in the Bible, but it's not going to stop the leadership of Jehovah's Witnesses from getting their hands around this. Okay. One more inappropriate comment. I slipped in too, sue me. For a Jehovah's Witness, it's such a serious sin that it gets entire chapters in their books, as well as entire articles in magazines. Masturbation, something you do in private. But the governing body doesn't stop there. They want to be sure you get the message about something Jehovah, nor Jesus, not even the Apostle Paul, ever even commented on. They want to blast it to millions all at once. I want to give you a taste of the dysfunction that resulted from this type of teaching that we're told comes from the throne of Christ. They did it openly. They're still doing it. From the Watchtower of 1970, October 1st, pages 599 through 606, under the grand blessings of the Men of Goodwill Assemblies, you know those highlight articles, remember what we learned at the convention, we get this, quote, one part considered the problem of masturbation. Although this is a practice frequently considered normal by worldly persons, it was shown that it is a bad practice that can cause much harm. It can lead to homosexuality. I just can't. But what can be done to break this practice? To stop seems to be easier said than done, observed one teenager on the program. End quote. That's right. If you were there at the 1970 Men of Goodwill conventions, you were treated to a part on masturbation and how touching your own body and figuring it all out could turn you gay. Something that is so absurd and so insulting, it takes a whole episode, not for today. But they even had a teenager on the program. Wonder where he is today. Yeah, it's tough, man. It's really tough. It's easier said than done. You know what I'm saying? Of course it is. Because it's natural. And again, came to us from the same God hosting the convention. A grand blessing indeed. Sitting with thousands, claiming that making movies in your head of that hot girl or guy leads to me doing completely private stuff. But here we are with thousands of people in a stadium in 1970 talking about it, and I'm still not gay. I wonder what happened. What? Which former or current governing body member was doing this with visions of a same-sex person dancing in their heads? Was this a confession? Because I think it was. Rubbing one out doesn't make you gay. I'm going to be blunt there. But the messaging of shame is effective. And many Jehovah's Witnesses know that shame well. It can follow you throughout life, all joking aside. For any Jehovah's Witness brother that sinned in multiple ways by watching the R-rated movie Fast Times at Ridgemont High and watched it and rewound it and rewatched it and rewatched and rewatched and rewound, you know the scene with the beautiful Phoebe Cates getting out of the swimming pool. For the guy that did that more times than they can count, you were clearly in Satan's clutches. He had you around the neck. And look, it wasn't easy to do back in those days. We didn't have remote controls, guys. We had to actually get up and hit the VCR rewind a few times. That's how important it was. That's how natural it was. For you kids out there, we didn't have the internet back in the day either, so we'll leave that alone. But putting aside puberty and the potentially insular, depressing life of an obedient Jehovah's Witness teenager, what about Jehovah's Witness adults that somehow navigate through the teenage years without having sex or thinking about it? How does this organization shape and control their view of sex? How about even for married? That's right, married Jehovah's Witnesses. It should come as no surprise that the governing body is sitting at the edge of your bed. That's right. They've inserted themselves into the sex lives of every baptized, married, heterosexual Jehovah's Witness. I won't here turn this discussion into an endless set of references on how sex is only made for man and women. They must be married, and even after they get married, Jehovah's Witnesses are taught that sex is basically the missionary position. Be nice to your wife, and it's really only for making more Jehovah's Witnesses. That's really how they view it, folks, or at least they used to. I'm not about to get into some of their more fascinating counsel on things like contraception, menstruation, whether you can have sex during that time period, or even pornography, or a long list of questions from the readers that you can find in their library, with questions that grown, consenting adults should never feel like they need to ask 9 strangers, 9 men in upstate New York. But I'm going to here share a small sampling of what a married Jehovah's Witness faces when it comes to this issue of sex. First, some, not all, but some, if not many at one time, entered into the bedroom with little to no idea what the hell they were supposed to be doing. They have no sex education. With a lifetime of shunning hanging over your head if you do have sex before marriage or even just mess around without intercourse, it's all fornication when you interpret pornea your own special way. A Jehovah's Witness often enters the bedroom for the first time, frankly, really ill-prepared, folks. Really ill-prepared if they've been obedient through their courtship. From the Awake of 1982, August 8th, pages 4 through 8, surviving, love that word, wonder why, the first year of marriage, surviving the first year of marriage. We all know you need to survive when you're in a spiritual paradise. We get this, quote, likely, engaged couples look forward to the sexual intimacies of marriage, as did the Shulamite maiden of biblical fame. Okay. Such relations can be beautiful expressions of love and a source of mutual ecstasy. While most adjust quickly, it should not be surprising if sexual relations are disappointing at first. Oh, no. One husband said candidly, again, we're going to get a quote from the guy. This isn't a coincidence, folks. We're going to get a quote from the guy, the husband. Back to it, quote, one husband said candidly, the first month was trialsome for both of us. I got seriously depressed. Ignorance abounds regarding sex, and some find it helpful to prepare in advance. Here comes the wife. A young wife said, I really didn't have any trouble in this regard. I wasn't squeamish about doing my homework, reading up on the subject. I knew what to expect. My husband also understood, and he was very gentle. Sometimes medical advice can be helpful. Due weight should be given to the thoughts of a Christian parent or a mature married friend in whom one can confide. The above-mentioned wife adds, my mom was really good about explaining matters. She was very open, end quote. What daughter doesn't want to know about her dad in the bedroom? Oh my God. Ignorance only abounds, as this article says, for obedient Jehovah's Witnesses, those that follow the 9 guys religiously. The rest of us learn this stuff in junior high school health class. Oh, and grown adults are blessed with free will and can make their own decisions about spending time with another consenting adult. But for a Jehovah's Witness, they get to the wedding night with a mix of excitement, and some of them get there with dread. Let me tell you, I've heard the stories with zero experience about the other person's body or just letting nature take its course, just living in the moment. She did her homework, she said. We can't have that. We can't live in the moment. We can't have that according to the governing body, not in the bedroom. Pull aside the elder's wife and ask her to explain doggy style to you. Or grab that elder and have him give you a quick education on boobs and what to do with them. That's literally their advice in this Awake of 1982. It's insane. And again, I'm sure Adam and Eve had no problems figuring out how their two puzzle pieces fit together. They had a lot of time after all, and I'm sure they liked what they saw. But that isn't the case with Jehovah's Witnesses. They're encouraged right here in print to do some homework, talk to some friends. And let me tell you, that angst and that worry is a real thing. I saw it. I dealt with it on shepherding calls, not knowing what to do the first night together. It was so stressful. This brother in this article says he got depressed. You got depressed about being with your wife? What? I would think you were chomping at the bit, man. Not always the case. And that's because it's a dysfunctional obsession with sex. The governing body and the organization like to make claims that your sex life is none of their business. But oftentimes, within sentences, literally sentences of one another, they prove to the world that they're liars. One such example, and it comes from a landmark article. I'm sure former elders from this generation will recognize the reference. The Watchtower of 1983, March 15th, pages 27 through 31, under Honor Godly Marriage. Jehovah's Witnesses were told this. Remember, these are married people. Quote, how about sexual activity between married couples within the marriage bond? It is not for the elders to pry into the intimate lives of married Christians. However, the Bible certainly enters into their lives. I have to stop there, end quote. The Bible. The Bible should be in the bedroom with you. When you're in the act, try not to think of Lot or Abraham and Sarah, or, the concubine who got chopped up in pieces, or David and Bathsheba, or Solomon and his 500 wives and 300 concubines for the nights the wives had headaches. Try not to think about that. Back to the quote, the Bible needs to be part of your lives. Quote, 83, March 15th. Those who would keep walking by spirit should not ignore the scriptural indications of God's thinking. My God, end quote. We got his thinking. The first book of the Bible, we get a lot of thoughts on sex and how Jehovah views it. Kill anyone who's had it, keep the virgins. Back to the quote, and they will do well to cultivate a hatred for everything that is unclean before Jehovah, including what are clearly perverted sexual practices. Married couples should act in a way that will leave them with a clean conscience as they give unimpeded attention to developing the fruitage of the Spirit. End quote. And now, for my favorite part, and one that was the subject of more conversations than I care to relate. This is already a long episode, including conversations with other elders who unburdened their own consciences to me after they had a particularly hot roll in the sack with their wife. In private, I might add. The Watchtower of 83, the landmark episode article says this, quote, as already stated, it is not for elders to police the private marital matters of couples in the congregation. However, if it becomes known that a member of the congregation is practicing or openly advocating perverted sex relations within the marriage bond, that one certainly would not be irreprehensible and so would not be acceptable for special privileges such as serving as an elder, a ministerial servant, or a pioneer. Such practice and advocacy could even lead to expulsion from the congregation. End quote. Married people. You remember they said twice within 2 paragraphs that it's not our place to even talk to you about it. But if we find out that you're doing some of this stuff, we can disfellowship you. I've got past episodes and I could go on for another hour. I'll try to condense it. And just a couple of things from this landmark Watchtower article, which serves as their last real commentary, I might add, on married people and that horrific, filthy practice, or so they tell us, of oral sex. First, Jesus nor his Father gave us any list of what they call clearly perverted practices between married people. So where did this come from? Thanks for the list, guys, but it's not in the Bible. Did you get this from Rutherford? Or maybe Nathan Knorr? Or maybe Toni Morris? Where'd it come from? Second, my conscience is perfectly clear when my wife and I do what we do in private, but thanks for casting some doubts and creating some sexual dysfunction. By the way, this article mentions oral and anal sex. I just kept it out as things married people can't do. Third, I can't be an elder because my wife and I go down on each other. Sorry to be crass. What? Why? Are we the very first 2 loyal followers of Jehovah to ever find this fun? Are we the first 2 who figured this out? You don't apply. You just simply can't lead other people because you and your wife do this together in private. Because I got to tell you, Jehovah nor Jesus mentioned it once in his instruction manual known as the Bible. Not once. But you call it unclean. Interesting. Fourth, if it becomes known, you say? How exactly does that happen? Is it something like this? 2 pioneer sisters are at a coffee break when one turns to the other and says, "My husband did things to me last night I can't explain. This, that, and this, it ended with me, well, you know." Sly smile and then takes a sip of her coffee. Is that what happens? How would any of this become known from 2 mature married people? How? But let me tell you something. During that time period, Jehovah's Witnesses were panicking on this one. And as I mentioned, people were confessing left and right, including other elders. And then finally this. Yes, sex between 2 married people in the privacy of your own bedroom or on a beach, it's fun, or in that waterfall after that hike, good times, or anywhere, can get a Jehovah's Witness disfellowshipped, shunned by everyone for the rest of their lives for putting their mouths on a certain place on their spouse's body. But it's not for the elders to police? It looks like it is. And this caused widespread panic. Folks, I'm here to tell you this caused divorces. You're really enjoying one another, and one of you turns to the other and says, "Oh no, don't touch me there or that way. We could end up disfellowshipped." Let me tell you, a real mood killer. As both of you picture Mark Sanderson, or maybe your favorite local elder, sitting on the end of the bed watching you and leaving a voicemail, scheduling your judicial meeting for what you did together as 2 married adults. Sexual shame, obsession, and dysfunction is a way of life in that organization for those that obey, And granted, this is one of those rules they basically stopped talking about since '83 and even enforcing in some cases. But this is their last detailed comment on things like oral sex between married people. So now those that participate just shut their mouths, uh, pun intended, including elders, I might add. And that's a fact, because I had several tell me, gee, why is there all of this dysfunction around sex with Jehovah's Witnesses? I just can't put my finger on it. Another pun intended. I could cite many, many more examples of their wise and inspired counsel on our sex lives. But I think at this point in a long episode, you get the idea. And while I could go on for several hours on this subject and the untold damage it does to a natural, beautiful, fun human experience, albeit one that has to be wielded responsibly and with knowledge, I'm just not going to go on with it today. Too much that could be shared regarding what they do to people's minds and hearts. The organization's obsession with sex, including its endless reminders and potential discipline if you even think about it or watch it, does deep damage to the human psyche. Their counsel on sex does damage that can take decades to undo, if it's ever undone. But how about we wrap up this discussion with some of their counsel on sex that those of us old enough to remember were exposed to in the 70s and 80s. I was a teenager, smack dab in the middle of puberty. I guess it does apply because this counsel is available at this very moment on their website. Just a nugget in their spiritual paradise. Brace yourselves. Here it comes. From the Watchtower of 1980, March 15th, page 27, Insight on the News. Sex after death is the question? Quote, Swiss-born psychiatrist Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross became famous for her pioneering research and best-selling book on the subject of death and dying. She also became convinced that many experiences related by persons who were revived after being clinically dead prove that when people die, they very simply shed their body, much as a butterfly comes out of its cocoon. According to Time magazine, she has now become an associate of spiritualist Jay Barham, who conducts seances that include sexual intercourse between participants and entities from the spirit world. Barham claims that the entities clone themselves, using cells from his body to materialize. The entities are unusually interested in sex, notes Time. But whether or not Barham's sensuous entities are real or a hoax, the Bible reveals that any spirits contacted through seances are not dead persons. They are known to be the same sex-centered supernatural beings who developed a lust for human girls in Noah's day and materialized to take the ones they liked as wives. From Genesis 6, 1 and 2. Good News Bible. Restrained by God from taking human form again after the flood, these wicked spirits in prison or demons have since used human intermediaries to carry out their depraved designs, end quote. You see, dear listener, you are really attracted to him or her. The butterflies in your stomach feel like birds. You want them bad. Jehovah made us that way. But even if they feel the same way, you're not married to each other. And even if you were, you're not ready to stay in the missionary position the rest of your lives together. In the end, your insatiable desire for that other person, for sex, a desire most would say is natural, is a lot like the demons. Sex, and anything outside of what they call decent, it comes from the demons. It comes from the demons. Not any demons. The demons that were there at Noah's day and watched their babies drown after having sex with women. In the very least, your sexual desires are watched by them. And if you're not alone, and again in the missionary position, reciting the Song of Solomon into your partner's ear as you go at it, there's a very good chance you're being used by demons to carry out their depraved designs. The subject of sex in Jehovah's Witnesses. With just this being a sampling of their messaging on this subject, that they say comes from Jesus, who forgot to talk about it during his earthly visit. Of course, he does now, all via 9 guys in upstate New York, the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. Is it any wonder there are generations of the happiest people on earth dealing with really dysfunctional and bizarre views or non-existent sex lives? If you're looking for proof of dysfunction, consider the words of one of the most famous Jehovah's Witnesses. It goes like this, quote, "I've always understood the two to be intertwined, sexuality and spirituality. That never changed." End quote. Aptly said by Brother Prince. I wonder if the governing body has Prince and some of his songs on their Spotify playlists. Thanks for being here this week. I want to encourage you to keep your hands to yourself, especially if you're not married, and be well.